Hello, folks. This Hangout on Air is live. There used to be a little chime that would let you know. Now it's just a little sign, and hopefully you'll notice. Today, here I am, Louisiana Beer Reviews, being joined by Maria Devon, the girl next door from New York.
Hello.
And this is titled Old Vienna Lager Revisited, because actually we both had it before.
And only on just, we'll tell them the story of how we both had this before. Okay. And didn't review it. And now we are.
Okay. We were on a road trip. We were on a road trip, and we got to Rochester early, about over 2 hours earlier than the tour started, so there was no rush. And
I'm going to open this while you talk.
Yeah, okay, about 2 hours. About 2 hours, and there was a grocery store on that main road, Ridge Road. I said, well, let's stop at Tops, because anytime I go in these grocery stores on a road trip, I'll invariably find some oddball item. You found the Schlitz VSL for 99 cents a can. I should have bought it. That was a big mistake. Anyway, I saw this Old Vienna for $8.99.
And the Yuengling, the black and tan.
You bought the Yuengling.
My other find in that Tops was that tall boy.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what we found. You found the Yuengling black and tan. I found the Genesee Ice. And then I found this for $8.99. And their prices were very good. I found that upstate New York beer prices were so much better than Louisiana. It's incredible. Although their gas prices for gasoline were much worse. Anyway, I also, when we went back to Ithaca, I bought that, and I don't think you've tried it yet, which is going to be questionable. That's Shock Top Twisted Pretzel.
Oh no, I haven't tried that. But you know who wanted to drink that was my son. He was in the refrigerator the other day, right? Just butt hanging out. The whole front of him was buried in the fridge, looking through all the beer. And that's the one he pulled out. He was like, how about this one? I said, no, save that. I got to do that hopefully with you, but we'll see.
Salty Twisted Pretzel.
Yeah.
So we bought the Old Vienna and we drank one in the car.
You got that at Pete's, right down at the corner.
At Pete's Sitco, which has really good prices for singles. I was impressed. And I bought some other stuff at Pete's. And then, but we drank one Old Vienna. Remember, we tried it in the car. We didn't drive while we were drinking it, but we did. We were just sitting there. There was nothing else to do. And then, so we were impressed with it. I knew nothing about it, although I'd heard some of the Canadian guys mention it. I knew it was an old Canadian brand. It says right here, 1862. Okay. A lager beer. And then when I looked at the side of the bottle, it said Molson, USA, Golden, Colorado. Well, that let me know it's American made according to the recipe by Coors in Colorado. And Coors and Molson merged many years ago. So they're the same company. And they just recently bought Miller. So now it's really Molson-Coors Miller. All right. We went back to your house. We were going to do more reviews, and then we couldn't figure out what was wrong with the camera. We thought it was Firefox. We thought it was that connection.
You're not even saying, oh, it does that on mine.
It does, but we found out.
Then your camera has to be broken too.
No, but it does. But yours just kept getting worse and worse, and then it totally failed. And so we found out the problem was the camera was bad. You couldn't even join the Hangout last week, which I know irritated you to no end.
Yeah, because that's one of my favorite beers. And then you guys had Hofbrau Original, which I love.
Oh, man. So here we have Old Vienna. You said, do you happen to have a bottle left? Just so happens I had one bottle left out of that 12-pack, and then you had the one that I left you. Because I wanted to take one with me as a traveling companion on the way back to Louisiana. So I took the cold one, and then I left you one out of the car. And then and then you did the Ziegenbach. I believe you did a video for Ziegenbach. Or did we do it together?
Ziegenbach. I had a bunch of beer too, and we couldn't do it at my house because the camera wouldn't work. Yeah, I have the Ziegenbach and I have the Fireman's Brew. I'm trying to think of the other one. There's another one too.
You did the Cocoa Tree.
Yeah, I like that.
From Bayou Teche. I noticed you were saying tech, but it's actually Tech.
I wasn't sure. You know, it doesn't say how to pronounce that. That could be trendy. You know.
Well, anytime you see the CH with an E after it, it's like a SH. Yeah. Tesh. Well, anyway, that's not important. And then we did the Foster's green can there.
Yeah, yeah.
ESB sort of type thing.
Yep.
Which apparently no one else can get. I have people all the time from all around the country.
And you didn't believe me, and I know you didn't, because that's why you went down to Pete's, was to spy and see if I was telling you the truth. I know you were checking out the singles. They're different. I mean, aren't they? They're different.
Yeah, and I've had people all around the country tell me, I've never seen that Foster's Ale, but it's common in Louisiana and Texas. But it seems like it's only common in Louisiana and Texas. Okay, and it's made in Fort Worth, Texas, so there you go. Even though it originated in Australia, where it's no longer sold. Okay.
And the Ziegenbach, that's only distributed in Texas, right? Like, that's not anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You can't get that here.
You get on their website, it says, brewed in Texas for Texans only. Yeah. They also produce a Ziegenbach Kolsch, which I've never seen, but I saw somebody talking about the Kolsch. But the Ziegenbach Amber Buck does come to Louisiana. And I actually called the company, which is Anheuser-Busch. And I said, well, I thought you said on the website it's only sold in Texas. And the lady on the phone said, oh, yes, only Texas and Louisiana. All right. Well, anyway, this old Vienna, 5% alcohol. And do you know what the calories are? I did some research.
No, 140.
You're close, 150. 150. How did I find that? I looked on the Molson-Coors website. There's no listing of this beer. It's like it does not exist. Although it is listed on the Molson-Coors website. I know it's confusing. But if you get on the Molson-Coors website, there's a little section called Nutrition. And if you click it, it brings up a PDF file that shows every beer they make. And this is listed under their specialty brands. And it says Old Vienna, 5% alcohol, 150 calories. Now, one more thing before we start. Couldn't find an ingredients list, right? But the Walmart website says the ingredients are water, barley malt, hops, and yeast. They don't list corn or rice, which I found was odd. Because
do you think it has corn or rice in it?
Well, I think it does, but you know, Walmart, they usually list the ingredients.
I think if it does, it has rice, not corn.
Yeah, and Walmart, when they list ingredients, all they're doing is getting their ingredients list from the company, right? Mm. So it kind of confused me a little bit.
Do you think it uses corn or rice, and which one?
I'll tell you what, let's drink on it and we'll talk about it because I have some ideas about it. So folks, this is
it uses both. You know, I didn't one of the ones that we did actually use both?
Yeah, I think Rolling Rock uses corn and rice.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I don't know. I'm not that good at the adjunct. I don't know.
I'm not.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, you talk about the description. It looks pretty standard.
I thought it poured out really well. It's light. You know, it's got a light color. It's got a thin head that doesn't last. It's got a flourish of bubbles. It's darn clear. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's clear. It's not really bright, but it's really clear. So I mean, you can say that as far as what you're going to tick up or down on the appearance for this one. And the other thing, well, wait, maybe it is a little bright. I don't know. I have to check. It's very pale, just like the faintest yellow, thin head that doesn't last. It's white, but I mean, it's hanging on for dear life. So I'd say that's a good appearance.
Yeah, and I think it's a good appearance too. It's bubbly, it's clear as a bell.
Yeah.
So under strong light, you can pick up some fine white particles, which you're going to get in any beer. There's only so much filtering they can do. I was talking to Chad McGee, the albino rhino from Canada. He did a review and he said, well, I sent him a photo of this beer and he said, this is really weird. He said, it's a different label in Canada with a sailboat and a knight, a medieval knight. I said, well, that's strange because we get this label, which is trying to look like a Canadian. When I went to Canada, they have these like shields and crests on all the government buildings. Like, you know, it might be the Canadian Ministry of Education and it'll have like a maple leaf and initials and a shield all the time with little medals. So I think they're trying to evoke that Canadian heritage or something. And it has nothing to do with the city of Vienna.
It's not a Vienna Lager, that's for sure. And you'll know that as soon as you taste it. So can't do that.
It doesn't taste like a beer that would have come from Austria.
No.
So apparently when they came out with this beer in 1862, they adopted the name simply to appeal to German immigrants who might think about Vienna, but that's about it. Right? Some of my ancestors came from Austria, the Osenachs. My grandmother's last name is Osenach. Okay. On with the beer. It's a little different in the aroma, I find. It's not, another weird thing about this beer, it's not certified kosher. Most beers coming out of Golden, Colorado will have an indication that it's certified kosher. This one is not, which has got me a little confused. Well, what do you think about the aroma?
Well, I think that when you encounter people who say that they want a beer that is not hoppy, they're talking about beers like this one. And it's not that there's no hop presence at all, but there's a very low hop presence. So the scent from this one is like a little bit of maltiness, little grainy malty scent, and then really, as far as hops, just earth. That's it. No herbal, no fruit. And there is a mild little hint of apple skin on this one, which is not uncommon in these kind of beers. And that's from yeast, that's not from hop. So, I mean, that has just a nice, light, mild nose. That's a lovely nose. There's nothing off. There's no buttery scents. No real, like, cooked vegetable flavor or anything like that, like no DMS. And that's why I think there's rice and not really corn on this one, because I think that rice naturally subdues that yeasty fruitiness, and that's one of the reasons that brewers want to use it. And it adds like a neutral dryness also to both the nose and to the palate of the beer. So I'm going to guess maybe there's a little rice in this.
Yeah.
Maybe a hint of sulfur every now and then. I think, oh, is that a whiff of sulfur? And then I think, no. So maybe rice also subdues that as well.
To me, it's a really clean aroma. And this is,
it's nice. It's very nice.
and this is coming within the Best By. It doesn't have a born on date, but it has Best By August. So we have over 2 months because it's, well, we have over a month and a half. And this company is very careful about the dates. So if they're going to give you a Best By date, it's pretty safe. It's a pretty safe bet that it should taste the same within that parameter. So what they're saying is, if you drink it within that Best By area, the first day to the last day, it should be the same without any deterioration. Well, that's what they're saying. They know more about brewing than I do.
Yeah. And what's really to go off about the hops in this beer, right? When you talk about freshness in beer, it's all about the hops, you know, and how the flavor of that. And there's ways that freshness affects malts too, but I'm not, you know, I'm just talking about hops. I mean, there's nothing really to go off. And as far as the flavors go, I mean, the hops lend just a little bit of crispness, a little bit of bitterness. You don't even notice that they're there. Right? You can't say it's bubbles that's made this beer crisp entirely, although those are crisp too. So, I mean, it's just like, you know, I think that these are the types of beer where you can exceed the date and not, you know, not really notice.
Won't be a big tragedy.
Yeah.
Jeff Lyons, who used to do videos with us, he was telling me the other day, he said, well, he said, I saw this beer show up in New England, I think he said New Hampshire, and it was in cans, and he bought it and he thought it was okay. And then he was talking about, and I'll bring that up later if I remember, he was talking about Utica Club. He said he thought it was, he said, wow, Utica Club is sold in my area. And, you know, most people in New York were telling me they don't even see it. So he was.
What a huge difference between that beer, fresh and not fresh, right? Like we had some, like right there at the place, and it's a nice beer. It's very enjoyable. It also has a lower hop presence on it, but fresh. It's like those are just prominent enough. You notice them, they're delightful.
Yeah, and someone sent me a Utica Club bottle, 12-ounce bottle, about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was not good. I said, I gave it a C, but it had some oldness to it and some offness to it. It's hard to describe, like it was off. But when we drank that Utica Club can and that Utica Club Light, which apparently is extremely rare, the light,
Yeah.
at the brewery, fresh, probably just went from downstairs to upstairs, and it was really delightful. I thought there were no flaws with it then. But did you see that post I sent you on Facebook about Utica Club?
Yeah.
They're going to put a new sign outside the brewery. Apparently, they're going to make a big push for that beer. They kind of let it kind of die out. But that's what they were saying. And then they said they had a shortage of it.
Well, I mean, and everything old is new again, right? All these brewers are reinventing their old stuff, and who has more old stuff to bring back than Saranac? So, and that one's still on the shelf. You can't say that one ever really went away.
Did not.
Still there. Why not push it? Why not bring it back to the forefront?
And the thing that you and I
has an extra strong bitter out called Old Tankard that they're bringing back from their old recipes.
Right, and that's a dynamite product. And one more thing, and then we'll get back to this beer. You and I found it so comical that we were on the tour, and they were showing us like 20 different craft beers. But then what were 85% of the people on the tour saying? When we get back to that hospitality area, we're going to drink Utica Club.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll find that beer has a regional identity, right? Over at FX Matt, we're drinking Utica Club. Over at Genesee, we're drinking 12 Horse, right? Over here in Ithaca, we're drinking Flower Power. I mean, it's like beer kind of comes with, each location has their specialty beer that it's known for. I think that's natural and nice.
Yeah, and I stopped one of the customers in there, and I just said, "Excuse me." I said, "Is this a common beer in this area of New York that people drink?" "Oh yeah." He said, "Oh yeah, you go to all these bar rooms and everybody's drinking UC. They call it UC." I said, "Okay, I was just curious,
Saranac made. What did I have that day at Saranac? I had a Brett Blonde or a Brett something, a Brett Saison at Saranac. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So you can't say that they're not. I mean, I think Saranac is traditionally German style, old style. You can tell that, but they've kept up. They've kept up with the marketplace, I think, and they've done their best to jump over fences in history when they came along, like how they introduced their sodas. Now they have the hard sodas, and they make a lot of money, and they make a lot of standing in the community by contract brewing. So it's like they're well known, and if you can see their facility, it's enormous. It's just so big.
Yeah, and we also had that delightful coffee light.
Oh, yeah, the coffee lager. Yeah, so nice.
They ended up giving us a lot more beer than we were supposed to get on the tour, but that worked out fine, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved it. I liked both tours that we went on. Now, the Genesee tour was totally different, right? Because that's just this little brew house where the guy is basically brewing just right out in public. He's doing his whole thing out there where you can see it, and it's like this is the mash tun, this is the bright tank, right? The bright tanks are over by the stairs, and the whirlpool is over here, and it was just really cool to go and see all that. But the most impressive thing about Saranac is the bottling line. I mean, holy discombobulation, Batman, that is precision.
Yeah, unfortunately, they were changing over to a different brand, so they didn't have much coming down the line. They had a few Brooklyn, what's the orange label? The
lager, the Pilsner. They had something from Brooklyn. They made my favorite beer last year that came from Brooklyn, which was the insulated black lager.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just like such a great experience.
So they had Brooklyn coming down the line, and then they had these huge pallets of cans of Mississippi Mud. And remember this one guy, this old 75-year-old man, he kept saying, Mississippi Mud, Mississippi Mud. And the tour guide seemed like he didn't want to talk about that. Yeah, well, let's not get into that. So then he said, oh, okay, well, that's the one I like. And then they got to the end of the tour, and I said, look at these huge pallets of Mississippi Mud. And they were coming off the line, and they were putting them on these big pallets. And then the tour guide said, well, okay, I'll tell you the story about this beer. And that was funny. But I guess we better get back to Old Vienna. But that was fascinating. And oh, one more thing about Genesee. You loved it because we got to talk to the brewmaster. Yeah,
wasn't that great?
He does their craft beers. We didn't talk to the brewmaster of their main brewery, unfortunately.
Well, but they didn't take us over there.
No.
You know, and we didn't get to talk to any brewmasters over at Saranac either.
No, but we were talking to the brewmaster of the Pilot Brewery who develops their craft line. And
the fellow who made the Pilsner that I just love this year, the best Pilsner of the year, 2016.
Yeah, and he was drinking some of this IPA, and he was saying, this stuff's no good. He said, you want to try it? And so he got a glass right out the finishing tank, right?
Yeah.
And he said, I thought it was really good. But he said, I don't like this kind of stuff. He said, but they insist that I make it. So I do it, you know, whatever. He said, but, and then he was going on like a rant and rave about beers. And he was really interesting to talk to. And he told me, you wouldn't make it as a brewer because I was too skinny.
That is what he said. He's like, nope, you're too skinny. You can't be a brewer.
He said, real brewers are all overweight because we drink beer the whole time we work. And then the comical thing, he just kept talking and talking to us. And then a hose exploded off the side of a piece of equipment. And it was spraying steam and water everywhere. And the other guy was like, are you going to come help me deal with this? And he was like, oh, let me go.
We did. We kind of took him away from his work. Well, see, he wasn't supposed to talk to us. What happened was we were supposed to go upstairs, but we weren't staying. And no one knew that. They were like, oh, you can meet Dean, you know, because I'm like, I want to meet the brewer. And they're like, you can meet him upstairs later. Well, there's not going to be any later, so I had to meet the guy. So these people from Wegmans came in, and he was talking to them, and he only planned on spending, I'm sure, just a couple minutes with them. And then we kind of monopolized his time after that because he did come over. And that's when I just pushed my way over there to meet him.
Yeah, and he
had to do it. When am I coming back? Never.
Right, and he had to talk to Wegmans because he was talking to the Wegmans director of brand development. Okay, yeah. So... but it was quite interesting, and he went on and on about the 12-horse ale, and that was a great, interesting thing to listen to because he made so many good points. But all right, I guess we better get back to this beer because that's what it's about.
We could just talk forever. We only went on a trip. We only went 2 places. We could talk for like I don't know how long.
A long time, believe me. Okay, the flavor. This one is really delightful.
I think I already did the flavors. You do yours because I already did it.
Okay, this one is a really interesting beer. Now, I drink a lot of stuff that comes from that brewery, Golden, Colorado, and I've never been to a tour there, but I intend to go because I hear it's fascinating. Okay. In the flavor, you're picking up some sort of adjunct, I think, but it's a background thing. It's like you talk about, it softens it. And there's a girl that posted on Facebook a day before yesterday about there's a big misconception about adjuncts and a lot of people don't understand them. And even craft beer companies are starting to use corn because they realized that they were missing out on a whole different world. It's not the devil. It's not Dracula coming out the coffin. It's just corn and rice are something that are 2 things that have been used in brewing for a long time. Okay. So there's a lot of mythology that's incorrect about it. This one has that softening. I find it has a little hop note at the end. It's like a balancing bitterness. And I know they're probably using those Northwestern hops, which they use in so many American adjunct lagers because they're like a standard bitterness, gives it around a 12 IBU. Like Schaefer used to call it around. Now Schaefer, which you can't get in New York, but for some bizarre reason we get here, Schaefer Light. Schaefer's a really interesting company because they used to make commercials that would explain brewing You know, they didn't have funny animals and you know, teenagers dancing in a club. They had explanations of beer, and they had a good video about why they add hops and not too many or not enough. And they said hops round the beer out. In their opinion, beer should taste round, not too bitter, not too sweet, just sort of like Phil Spector, Wall of Sound. You know, you can't tell what instrument is what or which instrument is which. And it's sort of like that with this, but there's a little, like Schlitz said, a kiss of the hops, just a little pinprick to round it. And I'm going to shut up, but let me, there's a mellow breadiness. The body's light and watery, but with some body, it's like medium, lower between light and medium. The finish is super crisp and refreshing. It's a round beer. You can see why people would drink this at a bar, eating pretzels, or with a ham sandwich, or say a cheeseburger with pickles, maybe barrel pickles. Probably smoked or pork, some sort of pork ribs or something. I don't know, but it's that kind of thing. It's not speculative. You don't drink this to sit for 2 hours and speculate on it, but you drink it to enjoy it. And I think they really hit the marks there on this. Will I ever see this again? I doubt it. But I have enjoyed some of the other Molson beers I've gotten from them, like the Golden, which is a 50-50 lager and ale mixture, which is an oddball thing. So I'm a fan of this beer. I'm glad I bought it. And I think for $8.99 a 12-pack, it's a winner. And then I'm going to let you have the last word on it. I'm very pleased with it. I'm not overwhelmed by it. And I don't think it's meant to be an overwhelming product. But I'm pleased by what they're doing with it.
Well, I thank you for the last word. And as far as the last word goes, I'm going to say I agree with everything you just said. And cheers. Cheers.
Link. If I had a chance to buy it again, I really would do it. It's not super cheap, but it's comparable to what you'll get with other major brands. And this is not a major brand. It's a niche brand. It's an oddball brand.
Yeah. And the disparity between the prices, right? $8.99 or whatever it was for the 12-pack, and a case of craft beer, let's say, which is $25 a 12-pack. That's an extremely big difference.
Yeah, and I think it's well made, and I think it's enjoyable. I'm glad I tried the old Vienna. I would recommend people checking it out, whether you find it in can or bottle. It probably won't make much difference. Chances are you won't ever see it. But if you do, I would recommend checking it out.
Well, I like it. I think it pairs with all the foods you mentioned. Plus, I would pair it also with like potato salads, macaroni salads. You could even drink it with fruit salad. And like you said, because the body is a bit thinner, it will go towards more foods. Like you can add salads to your menu, and this beer will still go. Yeah, every kind of like fried chicken, finger food, sandwiches, pastrami on rye, French fries, cheese fries, chili, burgers. It's clean. It's a clean, crisp little beer. And it's just malty enough to be pleasant.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think we broke it down enough. It's not a beer you want to overanalyze, but I think it would be unfair if people just threw it out and said, it's junk, it's trash. It's not.
Actually, as far as being not junky, this is one of the not junkier beers. Like for not junky, it's not bad.
Right. If you want junky, I can name some stores you can go to. You'll save money. And maybe you can lie to yourself and tell you that it's okay because you save 50 cents a 6-pack. But in reality, you know it's trash and you shouldn't have bought it. And I'm not buying it. And I'm not going to name the stores, but you know what we talked about off air. And that is no kind of benefit when you are buying that kind of stuff, in my opinion. It's like sometimes you just need to spend $1 and ride first class. Well, I mean, this is not first class, but it's not coach. But when those things we talked about off air, it's almost like you're riding in the wheel well of the airplane. You're in the baggage compartment. And who wants to do that? So at least here you're sitting in the cabin. All right. So, enough of the rant and rave with Louisiana beer reviews. I'm glad we looked at this. One last thing. I'm so happy you let me try that that Genesee Pilsner.
Oh, yeah.
From their pilot brewery.
Yeah.
I had been driving all day. You know, I was tired.
Yeah.
It was raining through the mountains in Pennsylvania. I was scared to death. You couldn't go over 30 miles an hour, so it was like so slow. But that beer really hit the spot, and it was so well done. If we could make a video on that, but I don't have any more. But they did a great job. Now, people slag on Genesee, and I'm one of them. You know that.
Oh, well, it's, you know, it's so funny because you're not the only person who likes to taste beer. That's the other thing. I don't think that any good brewer expects every single person, you know, to just say, "Oh, you're fabulous, you're fabulous." I don't think so. I'll tell you, my friend over on Beer Advocate, Jack, who makes all the beer, he was asking me. He said, "Well, you know, I was looking at your review of the alt beer. I have some feelings about the alt beer too from Genesee. I mean, so it's like you noticed the things that you notice. Other people notice the things that they notice. It's like that's the next one that's coming out though in the bottle." Is the alt beer. So that's the one I want to encourage everyone. Let's all go out and buy that one. Let's buy the Pilsner all the time because it's just that good. You would want it again. Yeah.
Oh, would I? And look, you know, we got to go to the brewery, and I was so impressed with their 12-horse ale because I had never had it, and I had a chance to buy a 6-pack a few years ago, and I was like, oh, heck, I'll just buy it the next time. There may not be a next time. And the brewer told us the story about that. So then of course, to be fair, we were drinking it on draft, and that makes a difference, right?
It does. It does. But I think that Dean Jones, I think what he said about how people view clean beer is true. It's like they're used to something that has a little bit more texture in it. That's not what you want there. And so I think he was speaking directly to the idea that the mouthfeel of his beer is just a little bit different, and it really is. And in the 12-horse, you notice it. It's so, I mean, it's just so crisp. And you're like, oh, isn't that delightful? You could drink it all day. It has tremendous flavor, and yet it never explodes your palate, right? It never becomes too much or too heavy. Right. It stays the same. As much as you drink of it, it's always the same. That's just beauty in brewing.
Yeah, I was very impressed with that. And I thought to myself, well,
I wonder where he went to school. That was what I would like. Oh, I had so many questions I would have asked him, and he just didn't have the time. But I would love to know where he went to school, you know, who taught him, you know, what are your beers? What do you have in your fridge right now? You know, for beer. If not your beer, whose beer are you drinking?
Yeah, they might have that on their website because when we went back into their hospitality area, they had a pretty huge sort of like museum area, the history of Genesee brewing. And I was looking at that, they were showing all the different brewmasters they've had. And they were saying like their brewmaster today, who is at the main brewery, which I wish we could have somehow pressured them into showing us around. But
and if we can thank the one fellow what was his name that actually gave us the private tour, because we were so early, right? I mean, like we walked in there just way too early for anything, and this really nice man came over and said, "Let me just show you the tour. I can do it." Yeah.
Right. He was great.
Yeah.
He had a lot of time with us. And he knew what he was talking about because he had been working there for a long time. And he said he helped set up the hospitality center.
Yeah.
But they had a section about their brewers, their brewmasters. And they have this guy who's a brewmaster today. But he's like 70 years old. And they said he started working for Genesee when he was like 18 years old, just like out of high school, just working there. And he kept, I guess they paid for him to go to school and get a degree or whatever. But he just kept rising up and rising up. And they said about 5 years ago, he was appointed the new brewmaster. And it was funny because they said the other brewmaster who he replaced had been there for like 50 years. So it's like, Here's a guy who's been working there since 1971, and he replaced a guy who had been their brewmaster since like 1961. So it's kind of interesting that that company has been around since what, 1878, but they've only had like a little handful of brewmasters. It's like they let people stay there forever until they're in a walker and they have to make them go to the home.
Or maybe they just want to stay there until they're in the walker and have to quit. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, and as big as FX Matt was, the Genesee was much bigger. You could see it was huge, and we only got to see a little piece of it, but it was huge. Imagine if we'd have gone on that tour, how big that would have been. And then what did FX Matt tell us? They said, look, you think this place is big, okay? And
yeah.
And the guy told us how many barrels of beer they produce a day, and all the audience said, oh, wow, it's unbelievable. He said, but honestly, Anheuser-Busch produces in one day, twice a day.
Yeah.
Twice a day what we produce in an entire year.
Yeah. Isn't that just like the scope of things really magnified for you? If you could have seen this bottling line, seen the stacks of pallets, right, with thousands of empty bottles. The thing is football fields long from start to finish, right? It's enormous. It's huge. How many people must work on it? And when it's running, right, it makes so much noise that you can't even speak to one another. It's that big. It's that huge. And the thing about Rochester, too, is that their water that they use is suited to brewing. Now, that's the other thing about, like, regional breweries that just take root, right? Like Genesee has taken root. As much as anyone wants to carp on them and say, oh, you know, Genesee, adjunct, you know, the cream ale, la-di-da, they've taken root. And their water that they use is especially suited to brewing, and that's what the guy said, and that's one of the reasons that people like their beer. That's upstate New York water that's especially good.
They didn't pick that site along that river by accident.
Yeah.
Said they located the brewery there next to the Genesee River because the water was so soft. And it's right next to the waterfalls, which are huge. And he said it's done for a reason. They did not pick it haphazardly. So it's fascinating. Well, this beer was fascinating. The tours were fascinating. And the whole thing is like super exciting. So anyway, that's it. So thank you folks for watching this old Vienna Lager Revisited. You'll probably never see it again on my channel or Maria's channel, but we're glad we got to try it at least. So that's that.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all, and have a good and safe and healthy day.